And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the second annual Let's Drink and Do a Podcast live from a bizarre location called the Golden Tiki in Las Vegas,
I can't wait to hear you explain this to the people.
I am joined on my left by Howard Beck, so it is now time to say the three most anticipated words in the history of niche basketball podcasts. What up, Beck?
What up, Zach? What up, Rach?
There's a body of water flowing right behind your head, and right next to me on my right is the great Rachel Nichols, host of The Jump, among many other talents. How are you?
I'm fine. Again, I want to hear how you describe where we are sitting and why.
There's a waterfall, and there's tiki torches and birds, and we're somewhere off the strip in Las Vegas.
Animatronic birds that curse, which means that for the first time in the history of the Low Post, your producer may have to bleep someone other than me.
I haven't heard the birds curse yet, but I'm very excited for that.
I'm told they curse.
There's a blinking mask behind Zach that may or may not cast a spell on one of us.
Which is very helpful to see the notes, and we asked the waitress, is there any, but it was flashing on and off. We asked her, is there any rhyme or reason to that? And she said, when the fake volcano erupts over there, the light goes on. So to give you an idea.
So we'll know when the volcano has stopped erupting, I guess, when we lose all light and we can't see what we're doing anymore. I'm getting a big Scooby-Doo vibe, by the way, off the creepy mask.
The creepy mask is good. I just left plenty of people information about where I was so that if I get kidnapped while here, like, there will be a trail.
I just want to kind of
stop. Because looking around, like, it's completely possible.
I want to stop the podcast and just turn it into we go interview all the other patrons
at the Tiki Bar.
You've come to Las Vegas, Nevada,
right?
And you can see the gleaming hotels,
yes,
right over there.
Yep.
And yet you have chosen. I guess we have to, through Howard Beck, not through me, to come to the Golden Tiki.
Anyway,
don't throw disavowing all responsibility.
Exactly. Don't throw stones from your glass house, Zach Lowe. You too are a member of the Golden Tiki generation, right here.
I gave you all homework assignments for this podcast, so let's start.
And we have drinks coming, so this is only going to get
drinks
better.
Are coming.
I was going to say, so the whole conceit of this is that when I used to live in New York City, we would occasionally meet for drinks in New York City. Now that I live in California, we have to meet here at Summer League because of Zach's international travel schedule and the rest of the summer. And that we have now conjoined this into two podcasts.
Yes.
And my only request, since I have no podcast represented at this table, was what?
Shout out for The Jump.
No, that we name the podcast Drunk with Power tonight, because we're going to be drinking. Perfect. And one of the Howard's podcast, which we'll do next, is going to be the conceit. We're going to make rules and regulations as if we were a commissioner, a drunken commissioner, hopefully.
Exactly. So by then, our job during the Zach Lowe portion of the podcast is to get drunk enough to have this work during the Howard portion of the podcast.
Well, they haven't served my drinks yet, so we're off to a slow start here at the Golden Tiki.
We're sober and powerless.
All right.
So let's start. The homework assignment that I gave all of us was to pick one under the radar free agency team.
Mm-hmm. When our food is here.
Our food is here.
Excellent.
That couldn't have been the Knicks or the Nets or the Lakers or the Clippers. Mm-hmm. And who else did I rule out? I don't know. Some other high-profile team.
You said all New York and LA teams are out.
So you had to pick an under-the-radar team, and I picked my own under-the-radar team. And we're going to start with mine because I know which one it is, and I know you didn't pick it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to say that it's not under the radar. But my pick was, and this was before the noise today about Russell Westbrook, my pick was the Miami Heat, who traded, in a sign-and-trade, traded Josh Richardson and some other things to other places to the Philadelphia 76ers for Jimmy Butler and reoriented their team around Jimmy Butler.
Do you think that that's how the trade call went? We are acquiring Jimmy Butler in exchange for Josh Richardson and some other things to some other places.
Well, it ended up being an incredibly complex four-team trade. Hassan Whiteside was involved. Myers Leonard is now a Blazer. Mo Harkless was a Blazer, but I don't know if he actually counts as being a Blazer because he was rerouted immediately to the Clippers, who were the fourth participant in that trade, as they were stealthily planning to snare Kawhi Leonard. So I picked Miami, and you think it's a bad pick. You think it's not under the radar.
I just don't think they're under the radar. I think
they're under the radar in this sense that they're one of the, in the last 15 or 20 years, they're one of the NBA's flagship franchises, and they've kind of, since LeBron left, gone into this perpetual state of like 42 to 44 win disrepair, and they're at risk of, like, when you go down to Miami to cover a game, some of the people on their staff would be like, "Oh, it's so nice that you're still coming here." like we feel like everyone just forgot about us when LeBron left. And so this was their big play of, we have no cap space. We've already traded a pick out to get traded 2 picks to get Dragic. We signed all these contracts in the summer of 2016 that are bad. This is our play for a star. Now, he may be a flawed star. He may be the 12th best player in the NBA. He's on his 4th team in 2 years, in part because he wears out his welcome everywhere he goes. But we're hitching our wagon to Jimmy Butler. And I just think it's an interesting play, and it's clearly not the end game because Jimmy Butler plus some okay players does not get you anywhere interesting, even in the Eastern Conference. So I picked them because I wanted to know from you guys, where do you see this going for the Miami Heat? And now the news cycle has already answered that question because it appears to be going toward a fairly serious pursuit of Russell Westbrook to pair him with Jimmy Butler. And so, Russ or no Russ, whichever one of you wants to start, like where do you see Miami going from here?
Well, I actually have a question for you guys because you keep much better track of this than I do.
And now I'm drinking, by the way.
Exactly. Yes. Can we give a little thank you? Thank you.
In Croatian,
I would like
we see Živeli.
I'm not going to be able to do that.
Živeli.
I'd like to point out that Howard and I got tiki-inspired drinks because we are comfortable living in the moment of where we are, and Zach got a beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a beer.
You know why? Because I'm strong and secure, and I don't get peer pressured into getting things that I don't want to get.
By the way,
so you can all just do
bleep
whatever.
off. Yeah, the birds will fill in the blank.
The birds will fill in the blank, and we're here.
You know what the genius of this is, by the way? The genius of 3 of us. At any given time, 2 of us can be eating.
That's
these
true. While
really
the other
hot
one's
chicken,
talking.
The finger thing.
I know,
Can
they're a
you
little more
focus,
spicy than
people?
that.
Someone
Okay, so
talk to
here's
me
my
about the
question.
Miami
Yes,
Heat.
here's my question to the 2 of you. Seriously,
Hi.
is
Anywhere's fine.
didn't they get themselves into the situation they were previous to these last 2 weeks because they promised a bunch of guys really expensive contracts that put them in bad salary cap jail for a long time?
Yes.
Okay. So what they are now doing is they were what looks like the only team that was willing to offer Jimmy Butler a 4-year max, correct? Just by from who he took meetings with?
You know, it might have depended on some of how some of the other dominoes fell.
Okay.
Like, if Kawhi Leonard had said it's Jimmy Butler or nothing.
Yes, but
you know,
since that
things
clearly
like that.
didn't happen.
I think Brooklyn, if they had missed out on KD, would have thought about it. But I think there's actually an interesting question. Like, I thought it was interesting that there was conflicting reporting about whether Philadelphia offered him the max.
Well, that's my point. So my point is they at least said, if they were the only one or one of the only ones, said, we are going to make this long, very expensive commitment to a player who I think that Jimmy has actually been a positive presence on some of the teams you mentioned. In terms when you said wear out his welcome, I think in some of those places he actually was a net positive. Obviously not Minnesota. That's not the one I'm talking about. But I do think that he played for Tom Thibodeau for 7 years. And I think that he could experience injury problems going forward. And that you have given him a lot of money for a relatively long period of time. You are now talking about bringing in Russ, who has a contract that the year he turns 34 will pay him $47.1 million just in that year. So that is a little bit of my question to you guys, is just from a sort of team building and roster building perspective, part of the trouble that the Thunder got into, it seemed that they had so much money committed to 2 guys and that they really couldn't put the pieces around them that they wanted to. Are the Heat walking into that same situation, or is it different because of who they already have on the roster?
There's been this sense the last several years, ever since LeBron left, that Pat Riley's got to have one more big score. And maybe that's been a theme for a long time, maybe even predating when he got LeBron in 2010. But there's this idea that Riley's not going to go out on this note. Riley's not going to go out having been spurned by LeBron and having his team go into just irrelevance, and then he's just going to walk away with and be satisfied with that. He's Pat freaking Riley, and so he got his star now. He got Jimmy Butler. This is their the stake has been planted. We're back, baby. Like this is people killed us for maxing out all these guys or going all in to keep Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. All this stuff, like there was this defiance to them when LeBron left. And it took years to really recover and get a star that was worth building around again, and people may debate that if they want to. I think Jimmy's worth it. But they got him. Now, you don't ever want just one in this league. You need at least 2. I'm not sure I like the idea of Russell Westbrook and Jimmy Butler together. In fact, I think it's a bad combination, period. Because Russ doesn't shoot, but Russ does want to handle the ball a lot, and Jimmy certainly wants to handle the ball a lot. And I think it's fair to conclude that that's at least part of the reason why Jimmy's in Miami now and not Philadelphia anymore.
Well, I don't love the mix of the two of them together. If you just add up, because Russ makes so much money.
Yeah, so much money.
He's above the max.
You might call it a super max.
If you just add up Russ plus Jimmy, plus they just used a stretch provision to waive Ryan Anderson, that lingers on their books for. If you just, that's it. If you just like those three things, you are not going to have a max slot, just not even one, until the cap. In probably 3 summers until the cap goes up that high, and that's you've dumped Justice Winslow, you've dumped Bam Adebayo, you've dumped your picks, what remains of your picks, you've dumped everything. Dumped Tyler Hero, who I like just because his name is Tyler Hero.
Once you have one of those guys, you don't need another one.
A hero?
Rach got me.
I was rolling. I didn't. So I don't know. So the counter argument to your argument though is that in the East, Russell Westbrook plus Jimmy Butler, misshapen as that fit may be, which you articulately described, it still gives you a chance to get the 4th seed, the 3rd seed. Maybe you get lucky on a couple of other things. Maybe Bam and Winslow blow up. If you can somehow get Russ without trading one of them, which is an interesting conversation. Maybe you get, maybe Giannis sleep. Maybe, who knows? Like, you at least put yourselves in position to be like, we can be as good as the Pacers, I think, but this idea that we talked about on your show yesterday, like, are they a contender with Russ and Jimmy? No, I don't think so at all. And then the follow-up question is like, what should they trade for Russ? So there's a couple of trade models, right? There's Goran Dragic plus 2 bad contracts.
Right.
So you've given up really nothing of consequence for your long-term vision. Like, Goran's good, but he's not a part of the long-term plan there. There's that, but instead of one of those bad contracts, there's Justice Winslow or Bam Adebayo, and maybe Oklahoma City tries to get either a pick, or you don't really have picks to trade, so maybe you tweak the protection.
Do you know why you don't have picks to trade? Because Oklahoma City has 2 of your picks
right,
that they got from the Clippers.
So maybe one of the things.
So that's my other question, by the way. Do the Thunder want to trade Russell Westbrook to the team that in the relatively short term, it's next year, right? Or is it the year after that?
Where the picks go 21 and 23.
Okay, so starting in 2 years.
I believe the 23 one has some protections on it that if you were the Thunder, you could say one thing we could get is we erase those protections.
Right, from your draft pick.
Well,
my point is you are sending your star to the team that you are hoping does poorly because you have their draft picks already prior to making this deal.
Maybe they think sending Russ there will make those picks better, not worse.
Howard, back.
I'm just saying, that's not unreasonable.
I don't think it's crazy to say they think it doesn't matter, that the pick value is unchanged. I also think go through the teams. I just think you have to take the deal that's not a bad deal.
Right.
Because you can go through the teams right now. New York, for now, the word I've gotten is they're not going to do it. But they can't really do it till December 15th anyway, which is a whole other subject matter. Half the league can't be traded right now. And I don't really trust the Knicks to hold on to any idea of being disciplined, although I guess they have been.
If you're Oklahoma City, do you feel you can start the season with Russ on the floor?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I'm asking. Like, in some situations, you would say, you know what? We want this done. We want to start next season by the time that, we want to have the roster we want to have to start the season. Obviously, their choices, their menu opens up past December 15th. So I'm just curious how much of a factor it is that he clearly is ready to be out, that they're ready to start from scratch. Do they feel like they need to get this done by training camp, or can they wait until December?
I think there's an urgency when either things have gone south and you have to trade a guy because you bring him to camp. Like with the Knicks with Carmelo a while back, it was just untenable. They could not bring him to camp. It was going to be a disaster. It was going to be a distraction. Westbrook doesn't talk to the media anyway, and when he does, he speaks in like 3-word answers. There's no distraction, and it's not like things have gone south. He and the organization are fine with each other. In fact, they're working together, saying, hey, what's best for all parties with Paul George gone is to go ahead and move you to another team. So it's a constructive relationship. I don't think there's any toxicity or concern in bringing him to camp. But to your point, Rach, yeah, you'd rather have it behind you sooner than later, but I don't think it matters to the Thunder's season or to Russ's future whether they do it now, October, December 15th, after guys are eligible to be traded. I think they can wait. I think it's more a matter of to me, the curiosity is how much of a market really is there? There aren't that many places. I was doing this mental exercise the other day the second I heard about Paul George being gone. Like, it was like inevitable to me. If he's gone, you automatically, you don't need a single report, you don't need a single source. It's just logic.
Right.
There's no point in having Russ anymore.
Yep.
And so I started going through the mental exercise, and I came up with like 3 teams that even maybe made sense. And it was Detroit, maybe Miami. I thought about Chicago, actually. This was before the Saturansky thing, I think. Not that he should matter in this, but he's their stopgap now, I guess, until Kobe White is maybe ready.
Some of these teams will come up with your second homework assignment, because when thinking about who needs point guards.
Where does he make sense?
I listed, I didn't list Chicago. I listed Miami as by far the number 1 choice to me. Detroit, I get it. You send Reggie Jackson plus something, or you send... I don't think they would trade Andre Drummond for him. I think they would consider Andre Drummond more valuable given the contract difference. I don't think they would do Blake Griffin, so I don't know that there's a great deal there.
So is it that they're looking for a situation like Detroit where they need a star where they couldn't get one otherwise?
Well, Detroit already made that trade, right?
Well, that's what I mean.
Detroit was the sucker that the Clippers targeted.
Do you need to find someone else like that? Because here's the thing about Russ's contract. That contract on its own, to me, would not have made sense for almost any other team in the league to sign him to. It made sense for Oklahoma City to sign him to in that month because it was after Kevin Durant left. They needed to re-anchor and sort of redefine the franchise. He signed that contract. Was it on Kevin Durant's birthday, right? Was it September something, before training camp?
Yeah.
Right? And then he went off and had his MVP season. And it was really important to the health and the fan base and the character and sort of what the franchise saw itself for them to sign that contract, which is why even though we all looked at those numbers and said, wow, Russell Westbrook's game depends on athleticism. Wow, that's a big number when he's 34. It mattered to them in a way that it might not have mattered on the open marketplace. Well, now you're on the open marketplace. So is there another franchise that having that level of a star, and Russell Westbrook has the endorsements, he is absolutely a superstar, matters, and is that enough to be worth paying him what you will be, in essence, overpaying him at a certain age?
So here are the teams I listed, and we can think about, here are some teams that fit your description. New York, I already said. Orlando. We're going to talk about Orlando later. Don't see it. Don't see it. He's not far from their timetable, actually. Like, they seem like a team that, they're too young. Orlando wants to chase, like, the third seed in the East next year. So, you could build some interesting deals around, like, Fournier and Terrence Ross. It's, like, not crazy. Orlando's not crazy. I don't see it. Charlotte, to me, is the other, like, just do it to do it thing. But they've now gone so far into the tank, into the we're bottoming out, that I think the timing is misaligned.
Now they're bottoming out? Oh, I'm sorry. This coming season is when they're bottoming out?
Until now they were mediocre. Now they're going to be in the toilet.
They won't be 7-59, but that's only because it's not a 66 season.
That was Bobcats. That was the nadir of
they don't have to take credit for, they don't have to take blame for the Bobcats.
They do. The Charlotte Creamsicles.
Once you change your name, it's like it never happened.
Houston, I just never. I mean, Daryl will do anything.
One doesn't. You know what?
I just don't.
Can I just say this? I'm not even buying that one. I know Daryl goes for every star who's ever available ever. It's his deal. It's his shtick. He loves it. It's fun. He loves being in the game and all that. You have 2 All-Star Hall of Fame point guards, and this guy's not better than either of them.
Including one who is also aging with a big contract.
Better than either of them?
No.
So I think that's interesting because the knee-jerk reaction to Houston's alleged interest was, well, that's a way to get off Chris Paul's contract. And my reaction to that was, Russ, by volume and athleticism, is a better player than Chris Paul. I'm not sure he's actually all that much better, and I'm not sure his contract is like Chris Paul's contract is. Well, I guess I think the years are maybe the same. I don't have it in front of me. It's either 1 year earlier for CP or the same.
Also, what's the incentive for the Thunder to do that? Why you're getting off of Russ because you're starting.
You want to be done with exactly.
Yeah. One other interesting wrinkle a GM mentioned to me the other day, just as a quick little footnote on the Russ thing, is that one, his market value is not that high in part because of age. Some decline in especially his advanced stats just show you, and he's not going to age well because he doesn't shoot, and he's all about athleticism, blah blah blah. And the contract number is really high. But there's also this other interesting wrinkle in that Sam Presti, and this was just what another GM said, and I think it's an interesting point. Sam Presti, in getting the incredible haul he just did for Paul George, does not have any pressure to try to maximize the return on Westbrook. And so that's interesting. Like I said, I don't know that there's a great market for him anyway, that there's a great package to be gotten, but it's nice to know that he's sitting on this friggin' massive pile of picks, and if he just gets cap relief for Westbrook and a couple of useful pieces and calls it a day, it's fine.
Right, but who's going to take that money on?
Well, let's keep going.
Okay.
Oh, you got more?
Well, first of all, your point on George is correct, because I believe that Sam was crestfallen, as Ramona described him, when Paul George went in there and said, I want out of here. I believe they were upset. They still seem kind of upset. But I also, he in one conversation, he was given enough leverage to construct a rebuild that was not accessible to him before that conversation.
And maybe
Paul George
in
on
the
his
end,
own does not get that
right,
much
and
stuff.
absolutely not. And
Paul
maybe
George
in the
plus
end will be
Kawhi.
a way out for him of a situation that, to me, didn't look like it really had a way out
Because Russ
2 months ago.
Russ is not getting you much. Steven Adams is not getting you much. Paul George was the only thing that was getting you anything, and because of that unique set of circumstances that had a stopwatch on it, Paul George was suddenly twice as valuable as a trade chip as he was ever going to be.
And in some ways, that whole situation was a gift because it allowed Sam Presti and that organization to reset in a way that they couldn't once they locked into Russ.
Well,
They now have the out. He could trade Russ and not be the bad guy and not be pilloried in Oklahoma.
And the whole situation, it clearly wasn't working. They did not succeed in any real way in the playoffs, and their percentage of how much of their cap that those two guys were taking up was only going to increase. I mean, you can't look at what has happened there for the last 2 seasons and say, yes, that was a successful pairing of two megastars.
Or that it was going to get any better.
So this was a way out.
So the only other team we didn't mention that's on my list is Phoenix. And because you can't put anything past Phoenix. But I don't see that either. They just signed Rubio.
What was the commercial where they're like, give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything? When we were kids,
cereal.
Life cereal.
Mikey likes it.
Right.
Mikey likes
I
it.
think you just brought up the Suns just like that.
Mikey likes
You
it.
were like, who could do something completely crazy and possibly?
Was that the commercial? He didn't like anything, but he liked Life cereal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Life cereal's an underrated cereal. Does it still exist?
I have not been down the cereal aisle in a long time.
I go down the cereal aisle once a week.
Really?
Oh, I'm all over the cereal aisle.
I excised cereal from my diet about 7-8 years ago.
He
That's
only
why I
eats
weigh
kale.
25 to 30 pounds more than you, is because I
He
didn't.
only eats kale.
He's not eating kale right now, baby. He's eating some chicken balls and tater tots.
So what were those? The captain's balls?
Captain's balls.
Yeah.
To me, Miami is still the leader in the clubhouse as a team that makes sense. But my somewhat lukewarm take on Russ, which will not surprise either of you, is I would not trade one asset for him. I would not trade an asset. So I was just having a conversation at the arena. Okay, so and someone posed to me, would you trade Justice Winslow for him? I said no. I wouldn't trade Justice. I wouldn't put Bam. I wouldn't put Bam Adebayo in the deal. And this guy looked at me like I had two heads, and I said, those are real assets. Like, those guys are good. Bam's on a rookie contract. Justice is on a $13 million
I
year
really
extension.
like Bam.
I wouldn't trade a first-round pick for him.
Yep.
Because unless I were in a unique circumstance where I really was a star point guard away from winning the championship, and I don't think any of these teams are, and I would not trade one asset. Now, I don't know what the floor of that is. Like I would probably trade Luke Kennard if that was like the only
Poor Luke Kennard.
borderline asset that was in conversation. But like Reggie Jackson's not an asset. Reggie Jackson's a net negative trade value. You know, like Blake Griffin, I think, is an asset, even or at least neutral. I wouldn't trade Blake Griffin for him straight up.
So there are certain players in the NBA who, in addition to their skill set and what it is or isn't, athleticism is or isn't deteriorating, money is or isn't coming on the books. Part of the factor is, that's not our guy who fits into our culture, right? He's got a bad reputation. He's a guy who's a problem. I'm not going to name them, but there's at least 2 pretty high-profile free agents this summer who fit that bill. Does Russ, has he tipped into that camp, do you think, for some teams? Or do you think the fact that he goes about his business within the team so cleanly is fine, and it's just the outside stuff is the outside stuff?
So that's it's a nuanced answer. I don't think he's reached the point that you're describing of he's going to be like an unpleasant influence in the clubhouse or in film sessions or whatever in the clubhouse. Like, this is baseball in the locker room.
I mean, you're in a tiki lounge in front of an exploding volcano right now, so who knows where you are.
But I do think, and this is a point about the Knicks, I'm sorry to say it, I don't think you can look objectively at the last 5 years of the NBA and tell yourself, we think Russell Westbrook is going to be the thing that draws other stars here. Because he has not drawn other stars to him. Other stars have left him.
Yeah.
And maybe there are complicating factors in all those decisions. Kevin Durant wanted to broaden his horizons, go experiment somewhere else, live in a different city. Paul George wanted to go home to play in Los Angeles. He wanted to play with Kawhi Leonard, whatever it is. So maybe you can wish away all of that, but there is no evidence other than Paul George re-signing and staying for a year that Russ is going to be a magnet for stars.
And let me just say this. I wasn't sure I was on board with this take in the first place, but there was a lot of reaction a year ago that Paul George chose Russ over LeBron. Now, I think he chose a bunch of different things over some things, and some of it has had to do with comfort and whatever. I'm not sure he actually literally chose Russ over LeBron, but you can't look at it and say that he didn't, right? It was part of it. In effect, whether it was the intent or not, in effect he did. Now he just chose Kawhi Leonard over Russell Westbrook. So if you're going to say he chose Russ over LeBron, you have to say he chose Kawhi over Russ just now.
Yeah.
And
I guess.
I mean, it's more than just going home, because he could have gone home a year ago. And maybe after 2 years of playing in Oklahoma with Russ, maybe he feels differently about it. I'm not going to try to mind read on him. I do know for a fact that it was a major consideration when Durant left. It wasn't the whole thing, but it was a lot of it. I reported at the time, and I've had no reason to deviate from that since. I don't know about Paul George, but he did just choose to leave him.
I feel like Royce Young at ESPN has done some pretty great reporting on just the details of Russ's regimen inside that training facility. How exacting he has to be about liking his sandwiches cut diagonally and how they have to be served, what time he gets there to shoot, what time the gym is open for him, where he parks, whether that parking space is crowded or not, crowded by other cars or not. All sorts of things, not in any way being presented as diva-ish behavior, but as particular behavior, right? He likes things the certain way he likes them, and that organization has been formed around him to the point where that is now his expectation. When he doesn't want to talk to the media, he doesn't want to talk to the media. So regardless of what might be in the Thunder or the league's best interest, these are the way he wants things. This is the way he wants things done. They have largely accommodated him in Oklahoma City. I'm curious if he goes somewhere else, if another franchise is going to accommodate him to that degree, and if they don't, what that will mean.
Accommodate is an interesting word. I think it's an accurate word.
Okay.
A stronger version of that might be enable. And look, it's not made up. I wrote about this last year when they lost in the first round. You can go back and look at the quotes. It's all on the record from Scott Brooks and Nick Collison and Billy Donovan and Andre Robertson and lots of other people talking about from 2013 on, we have to change the way we play offense. We cannot play offense this way. We need more motion. We need more passing. We need more ball movement. We need more X, Y, and Z. All of that is aimed at Russ. They changed the coaches. They changed the stars. They changed the supporting cast. Nothing ever changed. And they just keep bumping into this hard ceiling. And there's only one common denominator left. Why do they play this way? There's only one, and it's Russ. And it's not bad. Russ is a very good player. I put him on All NBA this year, third team. But there's clearly a hard ceiling that they can't get past. I don't know. I don't want to belabor the Russ thing, but I'm very interested if and when they trade him, what they get. Because if they came to me and said, hey, we want 2 first-round picks or we want a first-round pick and a young player, I would say hard pass. Come back to me when you're ready to have a real conversation.
And my final thought on this one is just that as critical as I've been, and certainly I've never been a huge fan of Westbrook's game and the things it entails and the things it demands of everybody around him, obviously, yes, there's incredible talent there, and I'm one who always says, and I will say it with him or anybody, everybody has some point at which they can evolve, and as a player or anywhere else. And will a different environment playing in Pat Riley's world, he may not be the coach, but Pat Riley dictates everything about that organization, their culture, their values. will Westbrook in Miami be a different Westbrook? Maybe my skepticism of him and Jimmy won't be well-founded because Russ will finally take that as the opportunity.
They'll win a decent number of games together. That team wins a decent number of games. No question.
My skepticism has to do with whether or not he can be less Russ. And I just don't know that he can. But that will be the thing that I'm most interested in, is whether he can go somewhere and evolve. And now the Birds are talking. The Birds have a Russ take.
The Bird, yeah.
It's a rough look by the Bird. Okay, enough with the Heat. Ladies first.
All right.
Who was your team? Your intriguing team?
So you said a non-coastal team.
Did I say non-coastal?
Well, you said, not.
These coastal elites.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly, Zach.
Define coast.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is not a secretive or, oh wow, oh my God, how did she think of this? But the Utah Jazz are coming, and I really, really like the fact that they looked at what happened to Golden State and looked at what is still going on in Houston and said, why could not this be us? And I do think the continuity of the core that they have, and then the additions of Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic are going to make a difference in their offensive flexibility, what they can do in those moments. There were so many times, right? They almost won 2 of the playoff games in the Rockets series.
There's a closer series after the first game and a half where they tried this super-duper goofy defense on Harden that didn't work.
Right.
Trying to mimic
that was
something.
Like 7 years ago, right?
Right. It sure feels like it. I mean, look, it was very obvious what they were trying to do. They were trying to mimic what the Bucks did successfully one game, right? The problem is that you're doing it 3 months later. All of that's been on tape, and a 7-game series is not a 1-game series.
Houston had figured some stuff out.
I do think, though, if you looked at the lineup they have now going into this year and you put them in that series, with everything else being the same, those 2 very close games where they just could not get the offense in the fourth quarter they needed, they would have it now. So I like that part of it. And I also like the part that I think that there's going to be some time maybe for these guys. I'm not sure about the Clippers, but certainly for the Lakers to figure out what they want to do and sort of who's going to do what on that team. So I think there is a window.
Yeah, LeBron.
Before Kevin Durant gets healthy, before LeBron and AD and whoever ends up on that team year after year learn how to play with each other.
I like Utah. I think the worst thing that happened to Utah, the worst break that Utah got this summer, was that Paul George and Kawhi went to the Clippers together.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now they went from a team that was, why not?
Right.
Why not, like, LeBron and AD and, like, spare parts?
Right.
That's pretty scary.
Right.
That Lakers team could win the West, but it doesn't scare us. Kawhi and Paul George and a deep team because of the smart management that the Clippers had before that mega trade. That scares me, and
sure.
That's a better team than Utah. But Utah they're really good. They're really good. They're deep. Ed Davis was a good signing. Jeff Green's a good signing. They're going to be really good. There's no question. Like, they could make the finals. But I think what happened with the Clippers means they need a lot more things to go right to make the finals.
Yes, everybody now in the West needs some sort of additional stroke of luck if you are not the Los Angeles Clippers.
The Clippers end of the season is the best team, I think.
But guess what?
Yeah.
Like we saw this year, that happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Portland Trailblazers, the ones that were supposedly unlucky coming into the playoffs because one of their main players got hurt 10 games before the postseason, ended up going to the Western Conference Finals, and the team that everybody said all year, forget it, why should we watch basketball? They're a lock to win it. They didn't win it. I mean, it's amazing. I'm listening to everyone going into this season saying, man, for the first time, we don't know who's going to win. I'm like, a team just won the NBA title that you couldn't have predicted because at this date that we're sitting here in this Tiki Lounge last year, Kawhi Leonard was still a Spur.
Right. The difference being that, yes, we did just have the unexpected, thank God, in some respects, right? We finally had something that just upended our expectations. However, I think the real, the concern people had, the gripe people had with the last several years, wasn't that there was no chance of a surprise. It's that we went into every season thinking there wouldn't be one. If you go in believing firmly that there is no suspense, even if it turned out differently, the problem was in October it felt preordained, right? We don't have that now. So this is what I love about this offseason to a large extent, is that we now have this sense of mystery about it. And I'm not ruling out the Utah Jazz from winning the Western Conference. Like, all right, the Clippers just made
By the way, I didn't mean to. Absolutely not. They could make the finals.
They could. They absolutely could. And the Clippers, it's a whole new thing now, right? Every time this happens, we immediately go, well, look at what they've got. They've got LeBron and AD. They've got Paul George and Kawhi? Yes, they do. We have to see how it unfolds. Like, we don't know for sure. It should work. There's no reason to think it won't work. But until we see it, and also, by the way, it's 2 and not 3. So the deficit between the other teams that don't have 2 superstars, like the Jazz have a bunch of really, really good players. They don't have 2 superstars, but they have such great.
The Jazz have 0 of the 15 best players in the NBA. Mm-hmm. They have 3 of the 15 to 30, whatever your floor is for Donovan Mitchell or whoever you think is the.
It's a different formula. And it might work because it just worked for Toronto to have one top 3 player, and I don't even know where we would put Lowry.
But that's where I do feel a little bit squishy about Utah, is that when it's really time, do they have enough? Like, you just need dudes who can be like, oh, you're the 3rd best defense in the NBA, you're all geared toward me. I'm big enough and strong enough and quick enough to get wherever I want, to do whatever I want, and you have 2 choices, let me do it or send a second guy. And I don't think that Utah has that guy. They don't have that guy. Donovan Mitchell isn't ready to be that guy. Mike Conley's not that guy. Rudy Gobert on offense is not that guy. They have a lot of great stuff about them, but that's the only thing that kind of makes me a little. And they don't have anybody to defend that guy.
Right.
Yeah. Well, few teams do. That's kind of an unfair nit to pick. What is a nit? What am I picking when I pick a nit?
Are they like tiny little bugs? You're picking the nit out of it's like a
there are nits. There are
like
nits and gnats.
A gnat.
It doesn't matter. I don't care.
I think a nit is
enough. I want my second beer. Howard Beck, what was your under the radar team?
I mean, I had 2.
Just pick one. Stop being greedy and pick one.
All right. I will live to regret this. How's that for a preface?
Wow.
The Chicago Bulls. Because a year ago at this time, I was looking at them and going, if you squint, you could kind of see the Bulls maybe making a... No, Howard, of October 2018. No, you can't. You squint all you want. It's just because I'm nearsighted. I thought...
you and Rachel, by the way, really depressing performance before the podcast.
Basically pitch black in here.
The people getting their phone flashlights out to look at the
really
menu.
Freaking dark in here.
It's been a long time.
We were trying to order something that was not just, I'll have a beer.
Right? We had to actually read
My
stuff.
drink has pineapples. It's got an umbrella in it. It's in a weird shaped glass.
Look,
my drink is named after Hemingway, so...
I'm 41 years old. I'm way uncool. Seldom do I feel young. Watching you two squint with your phones on the menus, I was like, boy, I feel vigorous.
In my defense, the volcano was not at that time spewing, therefore we had no light.
We did not have the light going on above us.
Hey, look.
Did you know there's a restaurant here in Las Vegas where you eat your entire meal in complete pitch black? How do you think Zach would do in that environment?
I don't think I would do well.
Hey, do you know what happened to me, by the way? I forgot to tell you this.
No.
Speaking of pitch black, the day of Game 6 of the finals,
yes,
I went to a meeting before the game in Oakland.
Okay.
With a business partner of a Warriors player.
Okay.
And I got in the elevator, and I hit 3 or 4, whatever the floor was. And the elevator started moving up.
And then...
lights went out, power outage, elevator stuck between floors 1 and 2.
And you were the only one in the elevator?
Only one in the elevator.
Okay.
So...
phone working?
I'm now dark. It's dark. I can't... I pressed the call button. No answer. Just nothing.
Phone?
And as I had this moment where I was like, okay, let me suss out my... And then I had this, like, let me try to remember biology. Like, is there a finite amount of air in the elevator? Or will there be more infinite air? How much air is there? How does breathing work? I don't understand.
This is where watching Die Hard
Try
1,000
getting stuck in an elevator, okay?
It has happened to me.
And so then I called the security. There was a security number etched into the phone for the building, or into the elevator.
Did you turn on your light to see the number?
It was pitch dark, so yes.
There we go.
And so
See?
I called it.
Judgy over here just used his phone flashlight.
I called it. And do you know that the security guy was initially helpful? Said, okay, we're going to send somebody over there. And then extremely unhelpful because he transitioned from, sir, we're going to send somebody over there now, to, stay on the line, sir. Do not hang up. Do not hang up. Stay calm.
Oh, I thought he got snippy. He just got
too many action
movies.
worrisome.
Like Last of the Mohicans.
Right.
We will find you. Stay alive.
I love that movie. That movie has been lost to time.
And so then 10 minutes passed, and I'm still on the line, and no one is coming here. And this is a very small complex. And do you know what I did? I just opened the elevator door and walked out.
Wait,
That's all I
what?
had to do. I just pushed my hands on the door. Opened it, and I was like a little above the first floor, so I just hopped out. I was like,
This is the lesson of Die Hard. You can
pull open the doors.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We used to do this in the dorms at UC Davis, because periodically, inevitably, the freaking elevator would just stop working. We did, in fact, get stuck between floors. But you knew you could pull open the interior doors. You push up that little thing, and it releases the outer door.
I didn't know.
Out.
I didn't know. So I'm waiting for the security guys. Then I just.
Do you think they're still looking for you?
No, they were on the way there when I walked out.
Okay, because he's like, I left him there. I told him to stay. I told him to stay there. They get there. There's no you. They could think you expired in some sort of weird disappearing way.
Anyway, please sell me on the Chicago Bulls.
So, Zach has no time for my elevator theories.
My feeling on the Bulls is this, because we're supposed to go below the radar, and if we're going below the radar, I want to at least be a little adventurous. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be adventurous. Is there a best case scenario? And I'm asking it somewhat rhetorically, but actually literally, because I'm looking at you too. Is there a best case scenario in which the Chicago Bulls chase the 8th seed?
Yeah, I think that's in play.
So that's why. So one, I love Saturansky. I think I have an irrational.
No, I'm on board. I'm on board with him, and therefore, one more time, wondering what's going on in Washington. But continue, please.
Yeah, no doubt. Kobe White's going to take time we'll see what he becomes. Chris Dunn, they're already obviously moving past. But Saturansky, Levine, Porter, Market, and Carter, we don't have to love the Porter, Market, and Carter fit at that front court, but they're all very, good players. Some combination of that is good. Levine might have his deficits or his deficiencies, but he's a very, very good scorer and athlete. And Saturansky is a guy who is going to make smart plays, not turn the ball over, versatile, plays and defends a few different positions. There's something there, and Markkanen should take another leap, and he's already shown himself to be, I think, very, very good.
You're reading from your notebook right now, and I'm thinking, you happen to glance down it when you said the word Saturansky, and I'm thinking of James Dolan being like, we have a lot of young, talented players on our team,
Please do not tell me that you just turned me into James Dolan.
Robinson, Mitchell, Kevin Canuck.
The 8th, the 10th? Which one is he?
Shockingly, the Knicks didn't get any free agents.
I cannot believe you just compared me to Jim Dolan.
No,
Wow.
It wasn't
that
a
was
comparison.
very personal for Howard.
It hurt.
My brain went from point A to point B. It was not a comparison. It was my brain making a leap.
James Dolan courtside with some interesting companions at Summer League.
You got heckled, right?
He did get heckled. When the earthquake happened, everyone's freaking out. People who hadn't already left the game decided to start leaving the game. The scoreboard's swaying. The speakers above are swaying.
What were they saying?
And as people were panicking in the moment, finally, after some slight calm started and it was quiet, someone yells, "Dolan, sell the team!" And that's how I knew everyone was going to be okay, because things were back to normal.
Wow. I'm really sorry I missed this historic
You
moment
can't
of Summer
sell a
League.
team with Mitchell Robinson and Kevin Canuck on it. It's too intriguing. I'm glad you brought up the Bulls. Sneaky good offseason. I think they're going to be a solid team next year. I haven't fully done my download of Eastern Conference standings next year, but I find it hard to believe if you look at a roster and say, if everything goes right, they could win 40 games. That means you're in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference because it's the junior varsity, and we should abolish conferences, but that's a different story for another day, and you disagree with me and you're going to yell at me. That's fun. It's a good story for your podcast.
Yes.
It is.
Drunk with power.
Chicago, so another homework assignment I gave you guys was, where can we find a home for Kyle Lowry?
Yes.
If and when the Raptors trade him. And Chicago is on my list. I don't think there's really a workable deal there because they don't have big contracts, but I could see them, they're a team that, if they're better than they think, and there's a veteran on an expiring contract that can, no harm, no foul. He can help us win games this year. He would be a really good fit at point guard there. But I have my other Kyle Lowry destinations. But Bulls? Thoughts on the Bulls?
Yeah, look, there's a little bit of an echo of the Russell Westbrook discussion because it's kind of who needs someone at that position. Obviously, the contracts are completely different, right? Kyle Lowry's on expiring. Would he need to buy into this team he was traded to because he wants an extension?
I don't think so.
All right, so I don't know how much that changes it, but when you talked about Detroit, you talk about Orlando, you talk about Chicago, these are all places they could use a veteran point guard.
You know what was my favorite Kyle Lowry destination, but I just
Are you going to steal my idea?
No, go, take it.
San Antonio.
No, that wasn't my idea.
reunite with DeMar DeRozan.
I did. They're on my list. They're on my list, but it's not my favorite. For that reason. Once my brain got reunite with DeMar DeRozan, I saw that movie.
You know I'm just a sentimental sucker for these things. I love a good reunion.
They still FaceTime 2 or 3 times a week.
You want
They
to see
tell
them
me
get swept by LeBron in the second round of the playoffs again? In a different conference?
I mean, listen, Pop would love Lowry, I think, number one. 2, they're a place that just kind of has a need at the position. I know they think they're on the right path there, but I could see Lowry playing there. And it's everything with them is a short-term play for the Spurs at this point. They're just trying to figure out where they're getting to next. We don't know. I don't think they know. As long as you've got DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge and kind of a low ceiling anyway, I don't know. I just felt like that was a fun place for Lowry. Now, you said spend less than 30 seconds on this, so I didn't actually try to figure out a plausible trade package, but
I like the idea of I'm just rolling with DeJounte Murray and Derek White.
They're fine.
I would like to see them this season and what they can do together. I don't want to throw someone else in there.
Sure.
My favorite Lowry destination, and again, I don't think it's workable so much, is can you imagine if the Lakers found a way to get him?
By the way, you were looking down at your notes. I just want to point out.
That's fine. I'm looking. He's a perfect point guard for LeBron, AD.
Absolutely.
That would be. But again, cobbling together the 29 or 28 million or whatever it is you'd have to send out. A, you can't do it till December 15th anyway. B, I'm not even sure. And they have no more draft picks to give Toronto because they've traded everything. I also thought about Orlando. Because Orlando is like a better version of the Bulls, and that if Orlando is better than they think they are, that means Orlando is on pace to win 48. What did they win last year? Mid-40s? Low to mid-40s?
No, it was 40. Was it 40 on the nose?
I think 41? It was better than that. But I don't. Whatever it is. If Orlando makes a leap, they have continuity. They brought everybody back. They added Aminu, whatever.
But again, this gets into what does Kyle Lowry want? Because how happy or unhappy he will be upon arrival is a factor for teams to consider. And what does Toronto want? Right? Because we're saying where would he fit in? But to your point about the Lakers, what do they want back for him? So the whole point of trading him now is his contract's expiring.
That's why Orlando, to me, can you build a package that's like Fournier, some other filler salary, and a really, really heavily protected first-round pick so that Orlando can talk itself into, we didn't give up that much. We've now given ourselves a shot to be a second-round team that has a puncher's chance of in that round maybe. And for the Magic, who have done nothing except win one playoff game last year since Dwight Howard left, that's exciting and maybe worth paying a little something.
Is that worth it if you're the Raptors?
I just don't know. Kyle Lowry on an expiring deal with a limited point guard market. And again, all the things we talked about with Russ, all these teams that are so far away, They're not going to give up anything for Kyle Lowry. I don't know if they'll find a deal that makes it worth it for them to, by the way, they're still good. They were really good when Kawhi rested last year. They're still really good. And I think they imagine if they traded Kyle Lowry in the offseason. He's not there to get a ring on the first day. He's not there when the banner goes up. I think that actually matters.
Sure.
I think that's a real thing.
I mean, look, you only win a championship and then get to mooch off that championship for the next year if you have at least some of the players that won you that championship there. Obviously, Kawhi's not going to be there anymore. Of course, guys like Pascal or some of the other anchors of that team are. But you want Kyle Lowry on the championship tour, right? You want those guys, at least some semblance of the team that won the title, to be going from building to building and in your building.
Something we don't talk about enough because we're all just obsessed with what do they do now? What's the best strategic move? And we get very into, we all love playing the fantasy front office person. So we never talk about the business side / fan service. What do you owe the fans? The fans are not going to get to see Kawhi through no doing of your own as the Raptors, but do you owe it to the fans to give them what Rach was just laying out? That Lowry, if this is his last year, at a minimum to be there for ring night and maybe at least get to the trade deadline, to have this victory lap, to have the fans be able to appreciate this group, sans Kawhi, but the rest of this group that brought them the most joy they've had as basketball fans in Toronto.
You've already had a frilly, fruity tiki drink, so you're totally acceptable to say bring them.
I would not approve of my
no.
of my grammar. But anyway, I think that's not Masai's main job is to think of that, but I do think the organization should think of that.
I just think before you rush to rebuild, If you have a team that we still think is going to be in the Eastern Conference playoffs, correct?
Oh, I think
Yes.
I'll go do you
Yes.
one better. I think their ceiling is ceiling. Let me be clear. Ceiling, everything goes right, is third seed in the East.
So are you so quick to want to run away from that, especially if you can have a little bit of that championship echo and dine off that for a little bit longer? To quote rebuild? I mean, is everyone in such a rush?
I think what it means, I think they're having that discussion internally right now, and I think the answer to your question is it's got to be worth their while. It's got to really be worth their while. It can't just be like, that's an okay deal for Kyle, but at least it's something. I think it's got to be better than that.
I had two other thoughts that are both still in keeping with my theme of like sending him somewhere with some sort of sentimental tie. Could we get him to the Clippers and reunite with Kawhi? They've got Pat Beverly at point guard, which is fine. Lowry would be better. But maybe with Beverly still there as his backup. I don't know what the deal is there, what the deal to be made is. And the other thought was, of course, Philly.
That's the one. That's it. If they could ever make that work, it's like a super Josh Richardson, but that's a win now. If you're losing Josh Richardson in that trade,
right?
That's a super duper win now, urgent move. But they'd be really, really good with Kyle.
It's probably not in the cards. It's probably where they are now, having made that deal for Richardson. It probably doesn't make sense. It's probably not the move to make, but it was the one that crossed my mind.
No, of course, sentimental.
That's it. That's it for my intriguing teams. We got to Kyle Lowry.
You got your second beer.
Got my second beer.
We should tell the people.
We didn't talk about Denver and Jeremy Grant, which I like for them, but that's a whole different subject.
That was a nice move.
I wanted to talk about player empowerment with you, but that's a longer discussion because what Kawhi inflicted upon the Thunder, as Mark Stein wrote today, has a lot of people talking in the league of, have we reached a point of no return on the players just running the league to a degree that we did not expect would happen. Paul George has 2 years left on his deal, and Kawhi just called him up and said, hey, get out. And now a whole team has been upended by this. But I guess give me like a 30-second take. Does any of it my take is the top 10 players are justifiably the most powerful people in the league. They are the most important people in the league. Their salaries are constrained by a system that is not fair to them, but is fair to the other 95% of their union membership. And so their primes are very finite, and so they're leveraging it. And the league, when they shorten contracts, I don't think they realize the degree to which they were opening this up as a possibility. So there are things about it that make me a little uneasy about what it does to team dynamics and the ability to build chemistry. But I am not bothered on some sort of visceral, fundamental level by Kawhi Leonard calling Paul George and say, "Hey, can you get over here?"
In the broadest sense, to answer your question, do you know who should have control? As you point out, the people who can do stuff that no one else can do. Because the NBA could find another billionaire or two to come in and buy some of these teams. So the owners are not the 10 people in the world who can do these special things. It's not the GMs. It's not some of the role players. It's the guys who can do something no one else does. And because they can do these things, there is a multi-billion-dollar business built around them. And they're still not earning the most money of everyone. They're still not. Even in this system, the ownership groups are earning the most money because of franchise appreciation. So the fact that they are now having more say, and that it is partly a result of all this little tinkering to the CBA, which was all about year after year, decade after decade, about how can we bribe people enough that they will do what we want them to do. First, it was the super long contracts, right? If we bribe them enough with this much guaranteed money over this many years, we can control them. That is literally the word that they used,
and then
right?
The teams found out, like, we don't like having David Lee on a 7-year contract that puts us in prison.
No. So how about we bribe them with a supermax? There's no way that these guys would ever turn down money. Guess what? They all make enough other outside money. They actually want some say-so over where they play, where they live, and who they play with. I don't have a problem in the larger sense with the people who have the most talent and most sort of unreplicable skill being the ones who have the most say-so. I think if we designed a more honest system around that, you wouldn't have some of the issues you have with franchises not feeling like they can even plan 2 years out. But because we're trying to work in the we can control and bribe you system, and then it's not working, that's where some of the issues are to me.
I mean, I would just say on that broader issue, obviously I agree with everything you said, Rach, and we should never lose sight of that. But we also should never lose sight of, and Zach and I have had this conversation on this podcast many times, the league is about the fans, ultimately, right? It's about the players and the most elite players and the elite among the elite. That's why the league exists and why it makes all the money it does, and it benefits a lot of people. But sports is about the fans. It's about fandom, and it's about feeling, and it is an illusion. I always say it's a willful delusion, in fact, that you have this connection with these guys. You don't. You wear their jersey, they don't know who you are. You have an allegiance based on where you grew up or who you loved as a kid or a commercial you liked, whatever. It's all an illusion. But the fans make it go. The fans make this whole economy go. The fans are the ones generating all those billions that they're all then fighting about how to split up. Mm-hmm. And I point that out because if the fans get to a point where my favorite player is constantly hopscotching around the league or my favorite team keeps losing the players that I'm rooting for, that's broadly speaking, a detriment to the league. And the reason that leagues have opted for more control is not just out of some sense that we must control them. It's not this, paternalistic instinct that is creating all these complicated rules. It's we have to have a product that the fans love and that they feel an affinity toward and a loyalty to. And if the roster keeps turning over or if you keep losing your best players, it's harder for you to sustain your fan support as a franchise.
I don't know if I buy it. Knicks fans are still Knicks fans, even though, God love them, the roster has not been...
There's no explaining that particular phenomenon.
Lakers fans have been Lakers fans despite the past 6 years before LeBron came.
I'm not saying fandom is rational. It's absolutely irrational a lot of the time. But I'm just saying, Rach, you're right. They're not paying a price at the box office. They're not paying a price with fans running away in droves, though Knicks fans should have 1,000 times over by now. It's not that. It's more just the idea that, like, those fans, they're sticking by you, but they also are, like, bitter. And in the case of the Knicks, like, the Knicks screwed that up. I'm saying if you're a Thunder fan, you lost Durant, but you kept Russ, and thank God we kept Russ. And then you got Paul George, and like, wow, look at what Sam Presti just did for us. We got Paul George. But now you're losing Paul George, and now you're going to lose Russ.
But by the way, they're losing Russ because the organization has decided, hey, it's best for us to move on from this contract that we signed with Russ and celebrated him. But no, it doesn't get to work both ways, right? When it's good for the organization, it's okay to trade a player away in the middle of his contract, but when it's good for the player, he can't ask for a trade.
I will say this.
Like, Russ signed a Supermax deal with them with the intention, I am sure, on the day he signed it, on being with that team until he retired. Correct?
And I think they signed it with the intention of him.
I understand. And then they would look at you and us and every fan who has a Russell Westbrook jersey and say, you got to stick with us, fans. Circumstances change.
Oh, no, and I'm not,
so it can't be okay for the team to do it, but not okay for the players to do it.
Not saying it makes it okay, but some of these things are happening sooner and more often now than they ever did before, right? It's the whirlwind. It's how quickly these things are changing. We just saw I don't know what it was, 5 of the top 10 players, 5 of the top 15, whatever we're doing. I haven't counted it up. Some number of the top number of the NBA.
A third of the players who made All NBA have changed teams.
There we go. That did not used to happen. And whether that's good or bad depends on your vantage point. But if you're a fan of one of those teams that had one of those guys, it's bad. You're sitting there right now going, we lost our guy again.
I'm not laughing at anyone's plight. I'm laughing at you with your fruity drink making this point, which is amazing.
Two things that I'm going to close this discussion.
Really not that
I mean, it's got hard alcohol in it. It just also is a piece of fruit.
It's a lime slice. Like, this is not. You have the umbrella. Okay?
I do have an umbrella and a pineapple.
Right?
And
so
Zach's trying to make a point.
I started this whole discussion by saying I'm not bothered on any fundamental level by the most important people in the league flexing their power. To sort of defend Howard a little bit, I did say there are things that make me a little. I'm grappling with them. I'm not quite sure how I feel. Number one, amid all of this talk about parity and how exciting next season is going to be, I do think it's worth monitoring, not making any conclusions on, that 5 of the superstars who forced their way out of teams went to New York or Los Angeles. Because there was this whole notion that the league has floated for years and years that markets don't matter and cities don't matter and blah, blah, blah. And I think if you're a Bucks fan right now, you look at what happened this summer and say, oh, that's a little bit scary, because I think the markets do matter. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe it's Brooklyn and the Clippers, smart management and this other stuff, but it's still New York and LA that won. And that's a little bit again, I'm just grappling with it. And the other thing is, and I threw this flag out to LeBron's people today. I've never had a lengthy one-on-one with LeBron before. This is the one I want because he is the architect of all of this. He's the architect of the player empowerment era. He also is one of the smartest and most caring teammates in the league in terms of valuing chemistry and camaraderie and enjoying the feeling you get as a basketball player when all 5 guys on the floor can close their eyes and play, can close their eyes and know. And I do wonder, are we losing a little bit of that if so many guys are changing teams every summer? Is it harder to get to the point? Because it takes years of playing together. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe LeBron will tell me it doesn't take years of playing together.
But you just had a team who made the finals 5 years in a row, and another team that made it 4 years in a row during that time.
And one of the
and all of this was during the quote player empowerment era that LeBron started in 2010.
But those teams were. In the case of the Cavaliers, the result of LeBron orchestrating, and in the case of the Warriors, the result of mostly organic building and Durant wanting to join it.
The Warriors are the story that is the counterpoint because they drafted well, and that's how you have that's how you have to build that kind of team.
But also, those two teams, Rach, were not undone by this player. They were formed by player empowerment, but they weren't undone by it. So
I don't know. Kevin Durant just left.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Well, now they were undone by it after they won 2 more titles. But if your point is that they got to 5 in a row during this era, yes, they did, because they were not the victims of player empowerment. They were the beneficiaries of it.
I mean, Kyrie Irving demanded his way out as well, and yet they were still able to make it to the finals the next year. Now, of course, they had an exceptional player still left on the roster.
That roster sucked.
My point is, and I would also make the point about New York and LA. What is the blind squirrel nut philosophy? Obviously, I'm not talking about the acumen of, say, the Clippers and Nets organizations, which we roundly say every day have made savvy moves. I'm talking about the cities in general.
Right.
Sometimes the good organizations with the smart front offices are occasionally going to be in big cities. Right? So occasionally,
that's why I said I'm still grappling.
Right.
I haven't come to because the Knicks can't get anybody.
Right.
And for the Lakers to get anybody, it took LeBron just basically saying, "Hey, you guys did nothing to earn this. I just want to come play for the Lakers."
Right.
And then I'm going to basically move heaven and earth to get another guy to come play for the Lakers.
Right.
Anyway, this makes for a smooth transition into part 2 of this podcast because we're going to be talking about whatever league issues we want to talk about on the full 48 with Howard Beck. Rachel, you want to make one more point?
I just wanted to say that I think I got the reverse of the Mikey commercial. So before people write in a long letter writing campaign to whether I got the Mikey Life cereal commercial, was it give it to Mikey he won't eat it or he will eat it?
I think this is all right. This speaks badly of me because there are 1,000 important things I cannot remember, but I have entire commercials from the 70s just etched in my brain. They're talking about life. It's like some new cereal. It's supposed to be good for you, and then they don't want to eat it. So they're like, "Hey,
he hates everything.
He won't eat it. He hates everything."
Got it.
And
okay.
Then it's, hey, he likes it.
Right.
Hey, Mikey. So they're surprised by it because they think he's going to hate it. It wasn't really a very well-written commercial. Let me just say that.
I'm just sitting here eating tater tots.
Do you also remember the honeycomb commercial, speaking of cereal commercials, where they were like, honeycomb's big? Yeah.
It's not
small. No. When was your primary goal in a cereal? I want a cereal that tastes good. No, I want one that's nutritious. You people can deal with that. I want one that's big. Yeah. There we go.
I did not expect as much cereal talk. I'm really excited that it happened. I'm very passionate about cereal. I still eat cereal. I ate so much cereal when I was in high school and I was a swimmer and I could eat 1,000,000 calories a day that my parents literally bought dog bowls to fit more cereal.
Wow.
For Great Danes,
right.
Big blue dog bowls. But we have to end the discussion here because we have to do Howard's podcast. Rachel.
Can we give a quick shout out to the folks who made this possible?
Sure.
Which we'll do again on my pod. A quick shout out to the owner of the Golden Tiki, Brandon Powers. Shout out to Eric Gladstone, who does PR and marketing for many restaurants in this town and made this all happen. The manager, Diakwa, and the bartender, Adam Rains, who I'm not sure if he's actually here or not, but it's possible he was making these drinks that you've been mocking, Zach.
Thank you guys both for your time. This is the 2nd annual drinking podcast. We've done more drinking. We will now continue to do more drinking. Next year we'll have to do something even more elaborate than this. But, okay, on to the full 48. Thanks everybody. The Lowe Post is presented by Goodyear. Discover the possibilities. Goodyear, more driven.